the word rich a lot, and it's not about money rich. Like, to me, time freedom, being energy rich. I mean, those are things that I really hold dear to me, and I feel like when I have those ideas in my head about wanting to live that kind of life where I'm rich with energy, rich with time, rich, that's the kind of life I want, that motivates me to go towards getting out of my comfortable.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Deborah Razo. Deborah started her first business in 1990, and after owning and partnering in several successful small businesses, she realized that her path to financial freedom was through real estate investing. So, Deborah, first I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on the show today, taking the time out of your day to talk to us. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's nice being here.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to start just, as I mentioned before we started recording, I just want to start with your background. Tell us your story, kind of give us a little bit of detail to that, starting of the first, well, you can start wherever you want, I guess, if you want to go back even between that, but just tell us your story and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been an entrepreneur for many years. I started my first business. I've always been kind of that entrepreneurial spirit. And the truth of the matter is, now when I look back on it, what I was really doing was creating my own job. I'll just put it that way. Yeah. And almost 14 years ago, be 14 years in October, I had something happened in my life that gave me an opportunity to start over. I was in a really bad car accident. And I think there are a lot of people have changes in their life, that happen, that they're kind of monumental, right? Like some people, it's a divorce or the death of a loved one, health, mine was a car accident. I don't know. Some people might be going through something like that now, just post-COVID,
Sure.
But mine was a car accident, and it was a kind of freak accident. I was a passenger in an SUV, and the tire blew, and we went into the dirt, and the car flipped, and it flipped driver's side first. So I got the brunt of the impact. And I was air vac to a hospital where they stitched my head wound back together and told me I had a broken neck. So it was crazy, and it was the beginning of a year-long healing journey for me. And at the time I had my own business, which, like I said right in the beginning, which was really, I had made myself a job, which I really found out about when I couldn't work, right? Because my income depleted, and I had to take some time out to just concentrate on healing my body. But you have that kind of time, and you have time to think, and time to think about your life. And I didn't have a bad life, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't the life I dreamt of, right? I dreamt of traveling the world and taking my children with me, and having time freedoms, right? I dreamt of all that stuff. And my brother, who was gracious enough to come out and help care for me during that time, knew that I was, questioning life a lot. And he had gone through a bunch of Tony Robbins stuff. And he said, once you're back on your feet, if you want to change your life, I suggest, attending something there, because, you have to change your mindset, right? And I had the idea, how am I going to travel the world? How am I going to do this? I want passive income, right? Okay, here's a solution. Now, how do I get it? Right? Yeah. And I literally started Googling passive income, and there's a lot of stuff that comes up. Royalties comes up, but real estate comes up. pretty consistently. And I had read the little purple book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, right? And so I was like, all right, I need to get me some of that. And once I was able, I did go to a Tony Robbins event, because I realized I really needed to change what was inside my head before I could change what was outside, and because I didn't know how to make a business where I wasn't the center and the working donkey in it. Right. So I went to a Tony Robbins event. I started drinking the Kool-Aid. I signed up for everything, and here it is years later, and I actually work for him now. I actually help people make their transitions at the events now, and it was a journey, but I slowly I decided I wanted to try flipping, and so I would flip and get some money, and then what's the outcome? Buy and hold, cash flow, right? I'd reinvest that into rentals, and built a small portfolio of single families in Memphis, Tennessee. And then gradually my skills increased, and I started developing in Los Angeles and buying multifamilies. And along the way, I missed my girls in the real estate industry. So I founded a networking organization called the Women's Real Estate Network for women real estate investors. And it's been a real journey, and it's taken me way out of my comfort zone for what my life used to be, but it's been super worth it, and the growth has been amazing, but I don't think I could have done it without changing myself personally to get to where I wanted to be professionally, so it's been quite an adventure.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And I mean, you touched on this, but like so many people have an event that sort of changes, maybe the event doesn't change your mindset, but the event is like the spark. And, yes. And then you're like, I got to change something about how things are going right now. And, for you, it was that sounds like a very scary car accident, you said, divorce, a health issue, children, whatever the case may be, something in, loss of a job. I think a lot of people, maybe especially during COVID, experienced job loss and then pivoted, right? And said, okay, maybe the life I had was good, but it wasn't great. It wasn't, as you said, your dream. So you kind of changed that outlook. And so I think that, I guess maybe some people are lucky enough to have those changes without having to have something tragic happen or some big event, but it seems to be often the case. It seems to be something happens that sort of just makes you realize, hey, maybe this isn't exactly the way I want life to be at this moment.
I feel like people get comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with comfortable, but the fact of the matter is when you're in comfortable, you're kind of staying status quo, and sometimes it's a great place to hang for a while, as long as you're conscious of it, right? But I think, when you have an idea of how you want to live, like, I use the word rich a lot, and it's not about money rich. Like, to me, time freedom, being energy rich. I mean, those are things that I really hold dear to me, and I feel like when I have those ideas in my head about wanting to live that kind of life where I'm rich with energy, rich with time, rich, that's the kind of life I want, that motivates me to go towards getting out of my comfortable, and I think we all have it, and we all have a resistance to it. I think our mind like tells us, warning, what are you doing?
We're geared for survival, sort of inherently, more than I guess greatness, right? Like we're more geared to what keeps us the safest, and certainly trying to do great things or change your life or any of that, taking those come with risks. And so our body and our mind are like, no, don't do that. You're good right here. Stay right here. Don't do that. But then maybe that's why it takes an event, right? Maybe it's like if you're comfortable and then you have a car accident, well, guess what? I was comfortable and still something happened. And so it maybe that's the reason why that often is the spark that changes people's ideas. I don't know, but you mentioned, you were an entrepreneur, you had started a business and you sort of created a job for yourself. And I think that's very common. I think a lot of us do that. Even whether you go into business or real estate or whatever, I think a lot of times the first thing that happens is you're like, I have to do everything. And so you do create a job for yourself. How did that sort of look for you? And then what changes did you make? I'm sure, being connected with Tony Robbins and that helped a lot, but like, what were some of those changes, both in your mindset and actual tactical changes for people looking to do the same?
Yeah, well, it was pretty clear to me, and I can actually name the turning point. So I was flipping in Los Angeles, and making my income, and then doing buying a small single family and making a little bit of cash flow. So I did that several times, right? And I was like, okay, this is my path. This is my path to financial freedom. And and then I started calculating like how much money I was actually making with these rentals. And I was like, wow, I'm going to need a lot of these.
Yeah.
Like, wow, okay. And the fact of the matter is I was nearing like my debt to income ratio. I was getting to that point where, the mortgage lenders didn't want to were looking at me quite skeptically, because my debt to income ratio, which is really like the plight of a self-employed person. We declare everything we can on taxes, so we look poor to the government, and then when you want a loan, you can't get one, right? So so I was in that situation, and I realized I'm gonna have to do it some other way if I'm going to get to what I want, which is that financial freedom number, right? Like Kiyosaki calls it out of the rat race, right?
Yep.
Where my passive income is equal to or greater than my bills every month, right? And that's what I wanted. And it was when I really had to take a hard look at how I did business. And to be honest with you, I had a very lone wolf mentality. And it's that mentality that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have. You start out having to do everything, right? And then, I remember I had a coach, because I totally believe in coaching. I coach and mentor, and I still have coaches and mentors, right? And I remember I had a coach saying, well, are you hiring the A players? And I'm like, no. Well, I can't afford an A player.
Right.
I'm a scrappy startup. And you realize like, oh, okay, then you're putting people in place to help you, but maybe they're not the right people or don't have the full skill set that it is you need, and so you end up kind of cleaning up behind them or doing whatever it is you need to do as an entrepreneur to fill the gaps. And so I really realized I have a real lone wolf mentality. And I had heard the saying, your network is your net worth, and real estate is a team sport. There's all these slogans that go around. I just never really paid attention to them. Until that moment, until it got in the way of me being able to like see what I want not be fulfilled unless I partnered with people, unless I really moved into getting to know somebody and understanding what their needs were and what my needs are, and do we align, and how can we do this together to make both of us money. So it was a real learning curve for me, to start to take on partners and start to understand the dynamics of partnership and who's making what decisions and all that kind of stuff. But it was also a real turning point for me financially, and getting me farther to where I wanted to go. And honestly, it was because of that lone wolf mentality, which, by the way, still raises its ugly head sometimes.
Yeah. I know it well.
No, okay, there you go. I'm preaching to the choir.
Yeah. No, I definitely know it well. And I think that it's tricky, because when you do start out in business or entrepreneur, real estate, any of that stuff, you do feel like you have to kind of do it all yourself, because there isn't any money coming in. You know what I mean? It's not like you flip a switch and suddenly there's a bunch of money coming in. So your point about, sort of your coach saying, hiring A players, and it's like, well, I wish I could, kind of, you know what I mean? You almost have that sort of question, but it's true. Like I think people that are truly very successful realize that those things are so important, kind of quickly, and make those pivots and use those concepts to grow. One of my favorite books, I've said on here before, but it's Who Not How, because I have that same like lone wolf DIY mentality. It's like that book just was so eye-opening to me in a lot of just simple ways, like just some of the examples that are in the book, with respect to like grocery shopping and things like that it's just like stuff that if you're really truly someone who has the ability to perform high dollar activities, like going to the grocery store probably isn't the best use of your time, or whatever other examples are in there, just like simple things like that. So I think making those shifts are tremendously helpful. And your point about having a coach and being a coach, I feel like the best coaches have coaches. Like they believe in that concept for themselves, and then are able to then pass it on to the people they're coaching.
Yeah, and realize that coachability is huge. It's like being a business owner, like flexibility, coachability, it's all, are huge assets to you when you are growing your business,
Right.
and I love that book, by the way. I've taken a lot. I like you, I thought the same thing, like, oh, right, isn't this a better use of my time to hire other things out? And I think there's something that comes with, being the founder of a business, where we all love our businesses because they're our babies, right? And,
Yeah.
and we treat them as such, and like, well, how's this person going to handle my baby? Like, maybe they're not going to handle my baby right? Like,
Right.
there's like, we have to let go and let somebody care for our babies, and provide feedback on, how to best run that. And that's hard to do when you're so emotionally attached to something that you're birthing.
Yeah. Well, and I think our tendency is to think that we're going to do it better than anyone else. And there might be a few things that within your business that you would do better than anybody else, but certainly not everything. And so I think it's also just getting that self-awareness to realize, like, okay, this is really what I'm good at. This is what I should focus on. And sometimes as an entrepreneur or business owner, like, what you really need to focus on is the vision and the ideas, and then put your implementer. No, that's not the word I want. But but something along those lines. The person that is gonna
Structure
essentially make it go, right? Like your COO to you being the CEO, I think, is kind of the idea, and finding that integrator. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rocket. What is the name of the book? West book.
Yeah.
Rocket fuel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean, the idea is just like figuring out what you are good at, and maybe you're the integrator and you need someone to bring vision or whatever it is, but like, it's you can't be the best at everything, and sometimes there are going to be parts of it that you might be the best, but if you can hire two people that are 70% as good as you are, well, guess what? That's still better than you alone, and lets you focus on what you need to. So a lot of that, kind of mindset shift that goes from being a solopreneur to a true business owner and someone that can actually grow and scale, is those are challenging steps to take, but so valuable in terms of like where you want to, because you said, I mean, that was the whole point, right? You realized you were living a good life but not your dream, and you could, if you don't make some of these shifts, that's kind of where you're probably going to stay, even though you might try to get towards the dream.
Yeah, and I think it's just like any habit we have, when you change the habits, when you're under stress or scared, you go back to that old habit. And it's just like that, like it takes you a while to, figure out, okay, no, the new habit is gonna, is what we need to implement. It's what we're, going to work. And sometimes that's just through advice of those that have gone there before me that I'm like super trusting. Like, I'm like, okay, you hired this person to do this, and now you're not letting them do this. And they're, you're becoming uncoachable, and, okay, what if I just did it, and saw where it was going to go and showed me something different and new and a new way to operate my business, right? So it's such a combination of skill set and mindset, but much more mindset than skill set.
Yeah, you can hire skills.
You can hire skills. Yeah, absolutely.
Hire skills. You can't necessarily hire mindset. So you were flipping, you were buying single family, and then you sort of realized that's probably not the most scalable thing. So where did you go from there in terms of your real estate business?
Yeah, so I realized that I actually bought a duplex, right? And that, like, oh, one roof, two tenants. When one moves out, I still have rent going, like it was like, oh, light bulb moment. And I'm like, oh, I need to do more of this, or, scale up. And at the time, I actually knew a apartment complex operator, and he was looking for money in a limited partnership type of way. And so I actually invested with him to kind of really observe the business model and how that worked, as well as, while I was getting education on, how to underwrite things and all that kind of stuff. And in the meantime, I was still flipping, and that skill set was growing. So I was raising more money because I started developing. Right. So I was like, oh, okay. So now I'm becoming a developer, and I'm having to raise money for these projects here in Los Angeles. And so they were kind of, the education was kind of going hand in hand in a sense, because I knew I would have to raise money to get an apartment complex. So, and then I met somebody else who had more apartment complex experience than I did. Key. Anybody out there talking about doing anything, associate with somebody who has more experience than you do, doing whatever it is you want to do, right? I met somebody like that who wanted to take me on as a general partner in her next project. So we ended up buying 3 apartment complexes together, and there I'm a GM in those. I'm a GP and general partner in those projects, and so those are scalable and much larger, but it was just a progression for me. I think I know people who, like, go directly into big apartment complexes, and I'm like, okay, that would have terrified me, but that's who I am. I needed baby steps. I needed to have, to see how it was all going to work out before I actually ventured into it myself, and I think there's a lot to mitigating the risk in your head when you're going forward with anything, really, and you have to figure out what's going to do that for you, like, okay, I'm scared about doing this. What would do that? Is it education? Is it team? Is it a combination of both? What is it that's going to make me feel a little more secure? Like, I want to be out of my comfort zone, but I don't want to be hanging out, with like that cat at the end of a knot, right? Like,
Yeah. You don't want to be terrified every minute of every day. There's some,
Right.
something to be said for just being outside the comfort zone, but still having, what the bumpers in the gutters, right? Like when you go,
Right.
you're like,
Yeah.
little bit of a safety net somewhere.
Right.
I
Like, and I'm
completely get it.
a huge proponent of having multiple exits in any project I get into, and I think that's really important for any entrepreneur or any real estate, especially real estate investing person. It's really important to have a plan B or a plan C if you need it. So.
So
Yeah.
true. These apartment complexes in Los Angeles or outside?
No, I have one in Houston and 2 in Phoenix.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
then I started, believe it or not, I started investing in Puerto Rico.
Oh wow. Okay. Well,
So
talk about that a little bit. I think it's I don't know, I feel like something that maybe people get nervous about investing outside the country, but it's
right. It's a territory, so it's
I was gonna say
right
there's
outside the country.
right.
Yeah.
Any differences there? Anything?
Sure. Yeah. I honestly, I had founded the Women's Real Estate Network, and there was a woman in my network who I'd known for years. And during COVID, she had quite a portfolio of short-term rentals here in Los Angeles, really nice ones, like out in Malibu. She had, like really nice ones.
Yeah.
And she got completely shut down during COVID. And she had just gone through some, a split with her long-term husband and, some things. And she was like, I don't have to be in LA anymore. And she ended up kind of dropping the mic and going to Puerto Rico. And Puerto Rico has some really incredible tax incentives there. You can actually bring all your capital gains in and not have to pay the government as long as you're a full-time resident there. And then they also have other tax incentives to people to invest there. They have some tax incentives for people to bring to help stimulate their economy through vacation rentals and bed and breakfasts and that kind of thing. Anyway, of course, any friend of mine that like leaves the country or goes to an exotic tropical place, I raise my hand and say, can I come visit?
Good idea. Good idea.
And friend I am.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I raised my hand and I went and visited. And of course, because we're both, real estate entrepreneurs, we ended up, driving around properties. And I ended up finding out more and more about the tax incentives that were there. And then we ended up joining together. She has a real estate club on the island called Rio Rico, and I have the REN network. And so we ended up joining together and bringing people in to educate them about, investing there. I'm huge on education, and that's one of the things that I rely on when I'm skeptical about something or have a lot of, I think there's high risk in something. And I thought that, and so I really dove into educating there, finding out, what it's like doing business there, and finding out about the tax incentives and doing a deeper dive on that. And of course, meeting a lot of people while I was there. So I went a couple times, and then a property came up that was a good deal. And so we bought it. And it's just a small 3-level multifamily, and we're turning it into a bed and breakfast. In fact, we just opened last month. And yeah, thank you. It's like 16 bedrooms, and so we're just now getting it up and operating, and it's been a really fun project, and there's been a lot of learning involved. I think that if you want to be a real estate entrepreneur, you got to be used to dealing with a lot of issues. Like I jokingly say that my phone doesn't ring unless there's a problem. That's all there is to it. Yeah. Nobody ever calls me and says, oh, everything's going really well. Right.
Just calling with good news right now.
Yeah. All the status quo.
Yeah. it's very true.
Get that
Very
call.
true.
I get the calls where it's like, you wouldn't believe what happened, like, and but I'm used to that now. I'm adjusted to that, and I'm like, all right. So, I think that is going to come up in any project, and it did come up in Puerto Rico as well. But luckily, we had the teams and the support to mitigate it, and so it's just a process. It's part of the process when you own real estate, and I'm used to it now. I think it maybe it sent shock through my systems before, and sometimes it'll send a shock through my system.
Yeah, it does feel like you just, in a way, you get kind of used to it. Like you get used to being a problem solver. Like that's what business and real estate as a business is. It's ultimately you're solving problems, whether that's with construction or occupancy or tenant issues or location, any number of different problems and so yes, some of the problems are bigger than others, but at the end of the day, it's all essentially a set of problems to be solved, and so that's what makes some days challenging, but also what makes it fun, right? It's like being able to come up with those solutions and be creative and just find ways to make things work.
Yeah, there is no cookie cutter. Like you can think that you have a good plan, and hopefully you do, but the plan's going to go sideways somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? That's the,
right.
the Mike Tyson quote.
Nobody planned for that.
Yeah, exactly. So it's yeah, that's very interesting. And I think one thing I've noticed, with the way that things are with the economy right now, a lot of people are expanding their horizon, I guess, if you will, kind of looking, whether it's investing in Puerto Rico, looking at other asset classes. I think a lot of people are just trying to, again, solve another problem. What's the way to make things work now that the market has shifted? And so it just seems to be that it's just a sort of a constant cycle of what's the next solution you need to come up with.
It's definitely not a boring business.
No, not at all. Well, Deborah, I want to shift gears here and ask you the questions that I ask every guest. And so the first one is related to the name of the show being Know Your Why. And so I like to ask everybody, what is your why? What's driving you forward? You're obviously getting more and more successful. What keeps you going?
Yeah, at first, because you guys heard my story about my accident, and my why at that time, I think, was about realizing life was short. Like, if you want to live your best life, you got to live it now. Like, there was a lot of immediacy to that after I, was healed and was starting to venture forth in my new life, which was completely uncomfortable, but actually, going towards what I want. And now I've had some success. I've done some things, and now my why has shifted a little bit. It's a lot more about giving back. When I look back at, some of the moments that I treasure in my business and work career, it's when I've empowered others to go forward in their lives. And I think that me working with Tony for so long and seeing how he does it and learning the skills that he does, and to apply those to real estate investors and help them in their journey, has been just a really beautiful thing for me. So there's a sense of giving back and a sense of community that I am really enjoying at this point, that I'm like, this is really cool. So that's my why currently.
And I think that's a theme I've noticed within myself and my guests. The why is sort of almost constantly evolving. We have different life stages, I guess, whatever. You might have different focuses. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, anything that you're comfortable sharing to let the listeners know you better.
Okay, I like to sing.
Okay.
And
What?
I belong to a singing group here in Burbank.
That's
And
awesome. You
we
say that
are
so like
absolutely, I don't know, it's, like, I don't know, it's my little closet secret. We're absolutely not professionals, like, but that's what I love about the group. Like, it's people who just like to sing, we're not, none of us are professionals. We just enjoy singing. We sing together. We sing, separately. We get the opportunity to explore that. And I love the creativity of that, and
Yeah.
I enjoy singing, and so yeah, okay, that's something.
Yeah, that's amazing. What kind of music?
I really like stuff that's like more blues oriented, or yeah, stuff like that, or old blue, like Bonnie Raitt kind of things, and
Okay.
things like that. I like singing.
I mean, I'm also a huge music fan, so that's very
Oh,
cool to
good.
me.
Yeah,
Very
yeah, I
interesting.
am too. And so is this group. We actually end up going to concerts and things together, so it's fun.
Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. I love it. Um, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to connect?
Oh, sure. You can go to deborahrazo.com, and it's DeborahRazo.com. And if you're a woman wanting to connect with other women investors, you can go, it's reninspires.com, WREN inspires.com.
And we'll put those in the show notes too, so people can find
Cool.
them
Thank
easily.
you.
Final question for you. What is a piece of advice you would give to someone who is trying to get started in real estate? They're hear your story, they're inspired. Hopefully they don't have to go through a car accident to get there, but ultimately, kind of want to change their life for the better. What would you tell them?
Yeah. Education, definitely, education, and then get out with investors. I think that, COVID put a damper on real estate club meetings, but now real estate club meetings are opening back up, and you can find a lot online too.
Mhm.
But it's really important to be around people who are actually doing the business, right? Actually purchasing and actually getting the cash flow, and actually, I think it meant a lot to me when I was new to this business, because I was like, is that really possible? Are they really doing that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it there was, proof. There was, validation that this idea that you have is totally possible. And I think that's really important. So yeah, education and networking, really, those are the two key things.
Yeah, totally agree. I think it's interesting because I think, probably a lot of people have like a picture or idea of what, real estate investing is, and that it's some like really exclusive club that you have to have, the secret password to get into. And the reality is you don't. And like, it's a very supportive community, and people love to share their knowledge and their experiences and help other people, kind of to succeed. So it shouldn't be something that people should be afraid of if they're interested.
Absolutely. And I think that, one of the things that I see with newcomers into the industry is that there are so many ways to be a real estate investor. There's so many different avenues that you can take. And, if I had a third piece of advice, it would be, pick one, try it. If you like it, do it again. If you don't like it, move on to something else, but
Right.
pick something and move forward. I think that's a really important thing, that you can get overwhelmed and get into analysis paralysis, and then never do anything. It's really important to do something and see if you like it.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Different for different people.
Take action in some. You can always pivot, right? So take
Yes.
action, and it doesn't have to be the perfect first step. It just needs to be a step. So I love that. Deborah, this was amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your story and your experiences. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you. I really appreciated getting to know you. It was really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. And folks listening, I know you're going to love this. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests like Deborah. And thank you all for listening.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Ballara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.